Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. A weapon that has been largely obsolete since the Caldera and the Vanguard update here in Warzone is the Volk. For the longest time, it's just been too weak, didn't have enough range, had bad control, you name it, it just wasn't a competitive weapon. But after receiving several different adjustments over the past couple of seasons, honestly, the Volk is finally in a place where it is seriously good, especially with its different versatile builds. There are some insane close range builds, some insane medium range builds. You could potentially even use it for some range as well if you wanted to. And today we're breaking down the best Volk setup or setups you might want to check out. So as we go through it all, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it, would be seriously appreciated. And if you are new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, because every single day I got you covered with everything going on in COD. Okay, so first things first, we got to check out the stats, just the Volk itself, to figure out what is the true best TTK setup for the Volk, what's the most optimal. Also, you may have noticed, yes, I'm wearing a different shirt from the intro, and I'm wearing a different shirt from what you are about to see when we go over the class setups. That's because they updated the Volk a little bit, they changed the TTK around, so I wanted to make sure we had the most up-to-date and accurate information with this. The setups themselves don't really change. We got 3 that we're going to cover at the end of the video, but the TTK stats did get slightly adjusted, so why things have changed with my appearance. Anyways, when it comes down to the stats, as always, shout out to Tony, True Game Data, for putting in the work and getting this info out for us. 2 Volk setups that I think are the difference makers here. You either want the recoil booster, the 45 round mags, and the 428 barrel, or the recoil booster, the 428 barrel, and the 60 round drum. So you're just changing the magazine here between the low recoil fast fire rate one and your basic extended mag. And as you can see, it's a pretty clear choice for a whopping 35 to 30 meters, so 5 meters there. The 60 round drums have a better TTK, but outside of that, 45 is the clear choice here. It's going to be better for control, better for movement as well, for like the sniper support build, which is the main build here. And even over range, despite the worse magazine capacity, it's still going to be very solid for TTK versus the 60 round drums. So now that we've got that out of the way, we can compare the Volk to other top tier weapons. Now I wanted to compare it against the AS44 and the Nikita with their optimal sniper support builds, or like main builds you want to use, because those are 2 other great sniper support weapons. So you got the Volk, you got the AS44, you got the Nikita, all dominating that sort of mid-range area right now. So obviously we had to compare those 3. Then I wanted to throw in the NZ, because of course that's a weapon that everyone has been trying to master over the past month or so, because it's been the go-to gun. So it gives you a nice perspective as to where these weapons fall. Now when we look at the stats here, we get a pretty interesting graph. You'll notice the NZ really has no benefits here. 30 to what do we got, 32 meters here, it has a better TTK than one of these weapons, which is the Volk in this case. Obviously we're looking more towards a sniper support in mid-range areas, so it's not the NZ's necessarily best position, but it's still good for mid-range, right? Like, it's not a bad weapon by any means, but compared to these 3, it's not really a close competition. So let's get that out of here, throw it to the side. Instead, now we just have the Nikita, the AS44, and the Volk. Now you'll notice that yes, the Volk does have the earliest damage drop off here at 30 meters compared to the Nikita, which has a great damage range at 42. Then also the AS44 drops off a little bit early here, but obviously the Volk's is the most severe here. That said, there's something very important to take note of with these weapons as we take this chart into consideration, and that is the recoil. You can see the Volk here is primarily vertical, but it does move slightly to the left. There is a bit of horizontal movement, but the AS44s, while it's obviously very tight knit and just up and to the right, the damage per mag and that fire rate on the AS44 makes even 30, 35, 40 plus fights, meters, obviously, 35, 40, 45 plus meters. It makes those fights somewhat difficult, especially on like console. It can be a little bit tricky with that recoil and just how the weapon feels. And then you have the Nikita, which has an immense amount of vertical movement. It doesn't move too much horizontally, but it moves a lot vertically, which again, players are going to struggle with. The Volk's pattern here, by all means, is one of the easier ones we have in the game. So that's going to keep up the consistency, meaning you're probably going to land more shots with the Volk consistently, especially in this mid-range area, than you would an AS44 and the Nikita. So while it's not a super close competition from 30 to 40 meters here, the realistic TTKs, when you factor in accuracy, the Nikita and the AS44 are going to raise up a lot closer to the Volk here, so it's a lot more competitive than you might think, and especially over some of these longer ranges all the way up to 60 meters behind the face cam there. It actually is a lot closer realistically, but also up close through those first 30 meters, there is a negligible difference with the Volk, but you also get benefits of the way better control. Like I said, really good movement, really good strafe speed. All around, the Volk's versatility is just so many pros stacked on top of each other, whereas when you use the AS44, when you use use the Nikita, you got to factor in, okay, the control here is going to be really rough. The damage per mag on all these weapons, because the 45 round mag on the Volk is going to be kind of meh, but in general, I feel like there are more upsides, there are more forgiving factors when using the Volk versus these other two, which make it a top tier weapon for mid-range. And like I said, we got a couple of different builds here. You could even try out long range and some super close range as well that make this weapon one of the most versatile in the entire game. So that said, let's take a look at what these different setups are. Like I said, I'm going to go over the best general setup. I also want to focus on a close range setup and one if you wanted to try and use it for range as well. So first up here, as we saw in the graph, we're using the recoil booster, the 428 barrel, which is going to give us that better range, velocity, and control, and just make it generally very easy to use. Then also, we want the Gorenko 45 on there for better control, again, better movement, better ADS, and a better fire rate. So perfect for that mid-range area. Now, for the optic, things get a little bit tricky when it comes to mid-range, just because you want to be able to hold your own in 35, 40, 50, 60 meter fights, but also 20, 25 meters if you find yourself in that position. So to me, the 2.5 times if you're playing on PC is going to be a great choice because it doesn't have too much zoom for close range, but it's nice and easy for mid-range, and you can still hold your own up close if need be. The slate reflector though for console might be a better option just because it's a nice clean sight, perfect for close range, and it works well in mid-range too. That said, if there's a different optic that you're a little bit more comfortable with, always run that. Comfortability on optics is key. Now for the stock here, I love using the adjustable stock because it helps out with that initial control, also gives you a little bit of strafe speed as well, which is nice. You love to see some added movement benefits on a sniper support build. For the underbarrel here, strife angle is pretty much going to eliminate a good amount of that horizontal movement, so it makes it a lot more vertical based, and that makes it very, very easy to control. So that to me is my go-to. We of course have lengthen on there for that better velocity. For the rear grip, you can go a couple of different routes. Rubber will help out with that vertical control a decent bit, so that could definitely make it seem like it is very simple to use. I also don't think that vertical control is that hard in general though, so something like hatch is going to give you more of a balance, again eliminating any chance of that horizontal control maybe throwing you off, and then vertical helps out a little bit there too. Perk 1, honestly, I feel like Perfectionist is pretty solid, but for sniper support, you may also want to run Fleet as well. So this comes down to preference more. If you want something that's going to give you a little bit more movement speed, also some weapon swap, Fleet's the way to go. But if you want better control in general, Perfectionist would be the better option. So totally comes down to what you value more. Then lastly, either fully loaded if you want max ammo, or on hand for that faster ADS speed. You can't go wrong with either of those. And this setup here, I think, is the true best Volk setup. Again, primarily used for sniper support and for mid-range gunplay. Now, despite the Volk not being the greatest over range, if you wanted to try and use a long-range setup, you certainly could. I do think there are better choices, but if you want to test it out, I'd go for something like the MX silencer. I'd keep the 428 barrel on there. I'd go for the 3 to 6 times optic because that's obviously great for long range. I would probably keep the adjustable stock on here because the control is just so easy. You don't really need to change over to something like the PS stock here. You could if you wanted to though. I'd keep strife angled. You could go 45 or 60 here just for the damage per mag over range. You know, 45 obviously is going to be a lot harder to consistently knock and get a cleanup with just because that ammo capacity or fighting at a disadvantage, but it does have that theoretical better TTK. So you could go either or there. I'd keep lengthened, hatch, perfectionist, and I'd probably change over to fully loaded honestly, but that's what I would personally use for a long range setup. The last setup is probably the most fun out of all of them. This one is entirely based around strafe speed, and it is insane for close range. Now keep in mind, it is going to be hard to always compete against the top tier subs when you're using an AR like this because of some of the mobility disadvantages you have, but this is a very unique setup and one that does fry if you know what you're doing with it. So we're going to change over to the 287 barrel for better strafe speed, better ADS, better sprint to fire as well. We got the recoil booster on there too. Dropping back over to the slate reflector, regardless of what platform you're playing on, we're keeping the adjustable stock for better strafe speed yet again. Now, here's where things get a little bit interesting. You could certainly keep the strife angle here if you wanted to, but you could also go for something like skeletal and get better movement speed and make it nice and aggressive and very, very fast. You could even go for something like the ready grip though too and get even better strafe speed, also some better ADS. It does hurt your control a little bit, but this is meant for like 20 meters and closer, so control is not a huge factor. We're going to keep Gorenko 45. For our ammo here, you could go several different routes. You could keep lengthened if you wanted to. You could also go for hollow point though, frangible or subsonic to keep you off the map. For the rear grip, I'd probably keep hatch just because it doesn't offer any cons and it'll help out a little bit with that control. Just makes it a little bit more consistent. If you wanted to go crazy, you could do taped here for the better movement in general. You could go for fabric for a better ADS. You could go several different routes there for sure. It just depends on what you want to build around. I'd also go for either steady here for ADS firing move speed, again helping out that strafe speed, or even gung ho, so you could have that sprint while firing and make it a little bit more aggressive as well. Then lastly, definitely want to go for on hand for that ADS build once again. This thing is very fast for a rifle, super speedy, and the strafe is nuts. You will throw off players so much because you're moving so fast while firing back at them. It's just a very niche setup because it's pretty much only usable within 20 meters as mentioned. But that said, those are the best Volk setups to be running for all types of different engagements. Hopefully the video helped you out. If it did, or if you enjoyed it, let me know by dropping a like on it. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, because every day I got you covered with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.